Welcome back to the Single Pivot Podcast, where we have intelligent football conversations. And today it's time to have a preview of the upcoming Portuguese League, or is most commonly known as Liga Portugal, for the 2026-2027 season. It's all my opinions, obviously. The the transfer window hasn't finished yet. So it's all based on the facts and information we have available right now, based on squads and the schedule that we know. Things can change along the way. But as of August 8th, day of recording, I'll be presenting you with my thoughts on what may or may not happen. Um, it's going to be an interesting season because I don't think that there's a specific team that is a clear front runner. As a matter of fact, the typical three are, I think, are par, if not pretty much the same in terms of possibilities of winning. There's a few things, bits and bobs that I think push the needle one way or the other, but I think overall we're going to be seeing a very balanced three-horse race. So if we look at the teams that are coming in, like there's only two teams get promoted. So Marítimo and Academic Viseu are joining the team. Marítimo is like a big historical team in Portugal, as the little graphic here shows from Anti Football. They've been around for a while. In fact, they're the sixth team with the most presences or most appearances in the top flight in Portugal. Academic Viseu only makes their fifth um, appearance. They're a very small club. So I'm excited to have them around. The case of Casapia, for example, they've only been around 6 seasons, but oftentimes they have good runs in the tournament. So it doesn't mean that freshly promoted teams are bound to fail. It's just exciting to see them back. So, and another visual that I found very interesting from the same source, Anti Football, shows that most of the teams are concentrated in either Lisbon or Porto, um, with at least three teams in the islands, so two in Madeira and one in Azores with Santa Clara. It's not, I would say, shocking or surprising because players tend to be found in more populous areas, but it's becoming more and more evident that teams tend to center around Lisbon and Porto in particular. There used to be teams like Leiria, Académica Coimbra, or even teams in the Algarve like Portimonense or Farense. They used to participate in the Liga Portugal quite often. Not anymore. So it continues to be a thing, and it will continue in for this upcoming season. There's a couple of other topics I want to talk about. So one thing that was very apparent last year was the quality of the field in a lot of the stadiums, particularly mid-table and lower-table teams. It's been a growing issue over the years. It's just not covered in international media, primarily because teams just don't have the means and the finances to spend the money required to keep fields in good conditions. It was apparent already in the first game of the season with the Estrela Amadora Sporting, a complete disaster to say the least. Um, and from what I've heard and from what I read, it's not like teams or most of the teams, especially like I said, mid-table, low-table teams, um, have additional financing and methods in place to help with either irrigation, artificial sunlight, so on and so forth. A lot of it is driven by climate change because it's harder and harder, to get the right amount of rainfall, especially in like countries like Portugal, where it tends to be very dry in a lot of times of the year. But I think it just speaks to the difficulty in teams and having to maintain their stadiums. Um, Last but not least, because that's like a little bit boring, just one thing that I want to touch on before I talk about like my predictions for the upcoming season is to revisit something that I spoke about back in August, about 2 months ago, when the previous season finished. I talked about three coaches that I thought were ready to take the next steps, and whether it was going to be throughout the season when they get a move, or even um, in the summer. And it turns out, that's the beauty of internet, because I can go back to some of the feeds that I made, is that two of these coaches have made moves. So two of three, I didn't claim that they were going to make moves in the summer. I just didn't expect them to come this early. So Cesar Peixoto got the call up to coach Wolves in the Premier League. Um, Not totally shocked because a lot of Portuguese players and even coaches end up coaching Wolverhampton. That was the case for Bruno, and even more recently, Vitor Pereira. So not surprised again, like with a lot of agents pitching in, but it's good to see him in the Premier League. Good to see another Portuguese coach in the Premier League. I wish him all the best. I think he's very capable. It's a hard league. I don't think it's easy to transfer your skills and your techniques that you have in the Portuguese league, but at least I'm excited to see a coach that plays progressive, expansive football to now have at his disposal, hopefully, better players. And I keep saying Premier League. I know the Wolves got relegated, um, but it's still exciting to see another coach in England, right? Last but not least, Ian Cathro. Should play against Saint Etienne. Saint Etienne also went through trouble because they got relegated, looking to bounce back into the top flight in France. Another coach that I really liked his work, sees himself to a very important big club in France. So that speaks volumes to his work. And last, or should I say, with Carlos Vincent, I think it's just a matter of time. We'll see. There's been changes in the squad for Braga. They sold one of the best players, which we'll touch upon. I think it's going to be hard for them to compete the way they were competing last year. They've got they're well coached and well drilled by Carlos Vincent. It's going to be hard, but I still think he shows enough quality to bounce back. Like whether there's going to be a change mid-season or at the end of the season, not sure yet, but I still bank on him making a move. If it's not this season, it's by summer. Um, so, with that out of the way, let's talk about this upcoming season, which is the most important and interesting part about this video. Um, and it's gonna come down to one of these three teams, right? Like the Sporting, Benfica, or Porto. That goes without saying. I think what's special about this year is that you can make arguments for and against each of the three teams. And while most of the predictions, including Opta and some of the analysts back in Portugal, um, are hinting at likely Sporting coming back. I am not too sure about that. And there's multiple reasons. So what's evident from this chart here that shows the biggest acquisitions and the biggest sells, um, Sporting has had a huge turnover. They spent a lot of money to bring in new players, but they also sold two very important players in their team. Um, unlike Porto and Benfica, who Benfica spent a bit more or much more than Porto, but Porto has barely made any changes. In fact, some of these, like Kivior, he was already on loan from the previous season. This was just the acquisition that was made going into the 2026-2027 season. And Kivior was already part of their starting 11. So that doesn't really count as a net addition to the team. While Benfica, went in and spent money on a couple of brand new players, right? So what's out of these three teams, the one that experienced the most changes, and again, the transfer window is not closed yet, but the season has already started this weekend, so I think it's time to already start making some predictions. Um, because of the huge changes in Sporting, it's you would wonder whether this is good or bad. And historically, or at least leading by examples from other competitions and even in Portugal, teams that undergo huge changes, whether they keep the coach or not, usually it's not conducive to improvements, or at least short-term improvements, right? So that brings me to the first club that I wanted to talk about, which is Sporting. So I think Sporting is going to finish third. And the reason boils down to two things, really, or at least there's two reasons why I think that's the case. So, number one is huge turnover in the team. Um, Hulman and Morita had been staples of that Sporting team, whether it was back with Amorim when still around, or even when Rui Borges took over, along the way, João Pereira as well. Two crucial fundamental players. The engine and the breathing in that team that keeps the clock ticking, whether in Europe or in domestic competitions, especially in Portugal. Morita went on a free to play in England, and Hulman was sold to Atletico Madrid, something that was already foreseen for quite a while, as a lot of the rumors and the talks around a human wanting to take the next step in his career. Um, when I look at like Sporting a squad, it so many changes. So like the first and foremost, in terms of squad changes, and I think like positive, the work towards um, Sporting's possibilities of winning again or winning major honors, both the league and if not one of the cups. As introduction of the player on the left side, Rodrigo Salazar from Uruguay, one of the best players in the league. Braga's best player over the last 2 to 3 years, if not ever since he arrived. One of the best players in the competition, and I wish like Benfica would have made the move to acquire him. That was not the case, but he's coming in for um, quite a bit of money, 30 million euros. It was a player that played in Braga for pretty much like 2 to 3 years. Um, Electric scored already on his Liga debut today against Amadora. Offers a lot up front with the departure of Trincão to Saudi Arabia, and with other players who have similar profiles but can't guarantee, stay fit or provide consistency, like it's the case of Nuno Santos that I see here, and even Pedro Gonçalves. Like Rodrigo Salazar doesn't just provide depth; like he slots in right into the starting 11. Whether it's off the wing on the right side or he plays the middle. Usually I see him playing on the wing in the La Liga, but Rui Borges may have plans for him in a slightly different position. He offers a lot, right? Biggest acquisition. And to compensate for Hulman and Morita leaving, Sporting spent quite a bit of money bringing in two players. Those are Dumbia, that used to play in Italy, I believe in the second division, and then Altamira, who was a starter for Betis. Um, Quite different profiles from what they used to have, right? Because if I show up the chart here from the sources, yeah, Data MB has them. Morita and Humans are big misses because slightly different profiles of players, but they provided something in the midfield that was complementary. So both defensive and offensively, right? So two well-rounded players, but when you talked about ability to carry the ball, press resistance, ability to break lines, provide key passes in games, whether it's crucial assists or passes to the forward players that can make direct threats to goals, winning duels as well as being efficient in winning duels. They had them all. They ticked all the boxes, right? Technically above average players with good leadership, Hillman being one of the team captains. So those are big misses. I am not convinced that just based on player profiles, Dumbia and Altimira can replace them. The change has been now to a more physical team. Altimira is technically good and technically sound. Dumbia, I'm not. I haven't seen enough, but I think it pushes more for the physicality, similar to some of the players that Porto has brought in over the years, as opposed to ability with the ball in the feet to connect, say, defense to the forward lines. I'm not convinced. Um, Kokorashvili still in the team. I don't think he gets ahead of even of these new players. So overall in the midfield, I think Sporting got weaker. Up front, I already mentioned Zalazar. Today, it was the first time I saw Flavio Gonçalves play on the left wing. How does Sporting keep producing these players? Like, I don't know. But Flavio Gonçalves, if anybody is watching, I'll remove the video. If everybody's watching, Flavio Gonçalves for Sporting, a player to watch this season. What a gem! Another diamond from that academy. Um, at the back, a couple of changes. So Diomande is on the verge of signing for Forest, so he's not going to be in the team. Eduardo Quaresma and Gonçalo Inácio are probably going to be locked in the center back position. Ibrahim Ba, who was a good defender that played for Famalicão, is coming in to play for Sporting. So, like I said, lots of changes. Whether or not it's going to gel, I think it's going to come down to one thing only, which brings me to my second point about this team, which is Rui Borges. Um, Other than this change of profile of players, and I think a lot of turnover in the team, especially in the starting 11, not being conducive to consistent success, especially on the short term in back-to-back seasons. I think the second thing that holds Sporting back is their coach. Um, Rui Borges was successful in steadying the ship after Ruben Amorim left, because if we remember, João Pereira took over and it was a disaster. But because Sporting is well ran, the club decided to part with João Pereira and brought in the upcoming coach in Portugal that was producing good results with the team that he had, and which was Rui Borges at the time. And Rui Borges was able to capitalize on the time with the players he had and keep winning games enough to lead them to the title. Last year, not the case. Last year, they won nothing, right? Um, and although they had good runs in Europe, in the league they fell short towards the end. They'd really run out of gas, and what was very apparent is that the team slowly started to lose that magic and that chemistry that existed back when the Amorim days. So I think he profited a lot from those players, the chemistry they had, and the continuation of work that was done with Amorim. I think he continued that, right? I don't think he touched too much. Um, with time, especially with today's performance, again, first game of the season, um, Sporting doesn't just look like a completely different team. I think it's a team without identity. They were offensive in when we talk about a Sporting from last season, very offensive team, comfortable in build up, but very inconsistent. And today, I saw another team who took the lead 2-0, and the coach was incapable of making the right substitutions to hold on to a lead against Strela Madura, who's probably going to be finishing top five in the table this season again, right? Um, the coach, I believe Ruiz, like he's underqualified for the job. I think he did okay, but I think with Sporting, if they aspire to keep winning and being consistent at winning titles and cups, I don't think they can stick around with Rui Borges. So um, the reason why I have Sporting finishing third is because the other two teams I think have better squads, a little bit more continuation from previous seasons where they're already building on something or had won something like Porto, and I think they have better coaches as well, or coaches that I think are making better use of the players at their disposal. I'm not convinced that Rui Borges has instilled something in Sporting from an identity perspective. I think it boiled down to individual brilliance, especially during the preseason games. I didn't watch all, but at least like from what I saw and read, and there's with so many players coming in, it's hard. But we had already seen signs in the previous season with players he was familiar with, that the team was not consistent in providing good performances, right? So those are my thoughts on Sporting. Um, just wanted to show, yeah, the logo as well. They changed the logo. I think it sucks. Like, not, I'm not a Sporting fan. Obviously, they're a rival, but I'm not a big. I know it's trying to make allusion to the old school. Like, I'm always a big fan of retro and going back to the roots. But to me, I like the previous logo a little bit better, and like the fonts at the top, it just looks like a cartoon. But yeah, it is what it is. Now, between second and first, this is a hard one. And I try to keep bias aside. Like, I'm not confident in my club Benfica doing anything, but I can't help but think of how Porto won the title last season. I just can't help but think how they did it. And I keep referring to Porto as the Arsenal of Portugal, especially once since Farioli arrived, where they they don't play great. They don't. When we talk about attacking teams, like Porto doesn't come to mind. There's at least 4 or 5 teams in Portugal that play a better attacking football than Porto does. Um, uh, Benfica, to some extent, more driven by individual players last season, but Sporting as a whole play better. Braga, because they're well coached, they play better. Gil Vicente and the Cesar Peixoto play better. Even Famalicão play better. Um, like, there's at least 4 or 5 teams ahead of Porto play better. What drove them down the line and eventually they ended up winning the title was because of Farioli's system, their defensive setup, their ability to play with physicality, win duels, whether in set pieces, and win goal games by like fine margins. There's a lot of parallels drawn with Arsenal, and I don't think that's sustainable. Like, I just can't. So many games they won just 1-0 last season, playing some of the worst football I have ever seen. I recall one game in particular where it was the away game against Nacional in Madeira, and some of the commentators were talking about how that was one of the worst performances Porto had ever set up in decades. And we're talking about a Porto team that had, back in the golden days, they've had like many generations, but like Sergio Conceição, like even with Sergio Conceição and Jose Mourinho, who at times were pragmatic, they didn't play as bad, poor quality in terms of ball possession, ability to create chances and move the ball up the field, as poorly as Farioli's team did last season. They still were able to win the tournament because they were the most consistent team. And if you don't concede goals, you don't lose games. So I have a hard time if they don't change something and if they don't add depth to their squad. I have a hard time believing they can do it again. And it's hands in hand with Sporting, whether or not they capitulate on all those players, and if Benfica, with what we'll talk about, can improve. I still think Benfica has a better squad and depth than Porto does, and they brought in a coach who plays attacking football and I think plays a style of play that can win you games on the long run and can help you win titles on the long run. I don't think what Farioli did last season is sustainable, especially because in the Portuguese league, even though it's tactical and a lot of the teams, there's a huge gap in terms of quality, coaches do tend to adapt. So if the hardest aspect of predicting this is whether Farioli is going to change something. um, I look at the potential starting 11, similar to what they did when they won the Super Cup last weekend. Again, a 1-0 game against Torriense, who's like the second, third lower division team, with like a fraction of the quality, a fraction of the budget of what Porto does, and Porto just beat them 1-0. I know it's the beginning of the season, but um, I'm just not convinced, right? So center back Betnarek, unless he's picked up that knock, he should be okay to slot back in with Kivior at the back. Um, Diogo Costa provides the solidity at the back. Varela will slot in front of the defender so that he can drop to that back five when they're defending, and then the physicality up front. There's not been much changes with the Porto team. Have been a few incoming. There's one good player in particular they brought in at a very um, uh, good price. I struggle pronouncing his name, but Huang Im Biom, so I'm gonna call him Huang. Um, Technically gift like above average. He will provide, I think, some of a different profile from what they had last season, where they relied a lot on physicality. He brings in technical ability. So that's good, but not much change beyond that. Samu is still injured, recovering from an ACL up front. Andre Silva, who joined in the summer, came back after many years away. Um, I I don't know if I mean I'm not sure he's much better than Dennis Gould, who wasn't really being playing great, right? Um, and then Pepe and William Gomez have been reliable on the wings, but I don't know over a long season, um, unless they change something, this team is not going to create more chances than what I saw last season. I just don't see it. They got to change something. They got to bring in players, or the style of play has to change. Where Farioli's team, especially attacking, takes more risks. Um, I don't see that happening. And because of that, it boils down to whether Benfica can capitalize on both Sporting's making so many changes and then Farioli potentially setting up the team not to lose as opposed to setting up the team to win. Um, and with that, we will talk about Benfica. It's a team I know the most because I support them, obviously. And I'm at a crossroads. I I don't trust this club the way it's being run by Rui Costa. It's a revolving door of players, and you cannot sustain success. You cannot keep on winning and building success if you keep changing the spine of the team and having players come and go. Um, just this season already, and the transfer window is not done. Um, Franco Ivanovic is probably on his way out. A good forward that provide a different profile to what Pavlidis does. Pavlidis is better on ball possession, combination with players being that pivot to other wingers, while Ivanovic runs the channels. He's a different profile, and yet we bring in John Duran on a loan, similar profile to Franco Ivanovic after spending 20 million last year on Ivanovic. Again, it's just more of the same from Rui Costa, um, playing the odds of who can he flip, which player he can flip at a profit. John Duran, He was sensational when he broke through the Premier League. I remember very well watching those games for Aston Villa. Um, but since then, again, from Colombia, showed up in the MLS. I'm looking here at his history. Gets transferred for big dough to Aston Villa in 2023, and then is sold for almost 80 million euros to Al Nassr in Saudi. And guess what? Within 6 months, he's sent out on loan to Fenerbahce, and then another loan to Russia to play for Zenit, and then now he's being sent on loan to Benfica. If you've watched soccer long enough, a player like this, 22 years old, bought, sold for a huge amount of money, and then being sent on loan, there's something wrong with this player. And clearly, there's talent. He's physical. He's fast. He comes in with that hunger. He's relatively good in front of goal. He has that shot from, like, he can could shoot from far away outside the box. He can header. Like, I like him. He might be an upgrade over Ivanovic, but we already had Ivanovic there, who's a similar profile. He just didn't get enough minutes because of Mourinho and the shit show from last season that started with Bruno Lage. Um, Again, more another revolving door. So again, up front, got those changing the players. Rafa Silva stays in the team. Sudakov appears to have found his spot in the team, especially with Marco Silva coming in. And then Kaminsky, who I'm very excited to see play. He, again, revolving door. I don't know if he's going to stick around for too long, whether it's just a year, 2 years. It depends how many minutes he gets. There's a little bit of competition right now in the team. He's brand new. Like, I haven't seen him much, but from what I see in terms of profile and what I've seen preseason games, he's having a hard time adjusting. Again, new team, language, new coach. There's quality in there. He's a quality player. Plays down the wing, either midfielder or down the wing on the left. He's technically gifted. He can cross. He can even shoot. So I'm not questioning his skills, but Schlerdrup, who hopefully has a locked-in position on the left, and then Prestiani on the right with Rafa in the middle, he provides depth. So I see him look at Bacchio as fighting for those spots on the wings. But he's a slightly different profile. Like, he tends to invert quite a bit into the middle, unlike Schlerdrup, who's more direct on the wings. So depending on the team that Marco Silva sets up, he might be valuable. I don't know. But definitely a quality player addition. Is just the revolving door. Like, we've already have 2 or 3 other players with similar profiles. Is he adding more quality, depth? Is he going to get minutes? I don't know. Langley, great addition. I was skeptical at the back, but he's already impressed very well, comfortable on the ball. So now Benfica has both Tomás Araújo and Langley, who are center backs. They're comfortable on the ball. He provides the experience. Tomás Araújo has been around. He's already 24, but slightly less years, especially in Europe. Langley brings in that know-how. I think with Dedic and Dal playing on the fullback positions, the back position is pretty much the defensive line is pretty much set up, and then in goal is where we probably have the Achilles of this team, which is with Rubin. Not convincing. I mean, he's been around in the club for quite a few years now, but as time goes by, since 2023, you can tell by the fans' reactions in games, they don't fully trust him. I don't think it was totally his fault last season because he had Otamendi just doing Otamendi things. There's no way a goalkeeper can see a defensive line being so inconsistent and making individual mistakes for him to feel comfortable and confident, because goalkeepers, it boils down to confidence. He's a good shot stopper. He's okay with his feet, not the best, and he's okay leaving corners, but then doing those specific saves like tough, he's a tall goalkeeper. Shots or headers low to the ground, he struggles with those, and at times even with balls in the air, he can drop those balls when you think he's should be able to keep them. He's the Achilles tandem. And then with the midfield, Ausner's, I think, has a place, especially with Marco Silva system, where he likes ball possession with intent. We'll talk about it. But other than that, Barreiro, he provides the energy, but not a lot of the technicality. Barrenechea, good defensively, but doesn't provide much more. And then Rios, I haven't seen enough of Rios providing that link between defense and offense. So other than the goalkeeper, The midfield might be missing a player profile, so they might be still looking around. But in terms of depth, they've got a lot. Sudakov can play the middle with Rafa Silva. Like like for a long season where Benfica hopefully qualifies for Liga Europa, um, they've got the biggest depth in the squad. Like compared to Porto and Sporting, just way too much quality in here. Even if you got injuries, I just see way too much quality. And I think the biggest driving factor for all of this, and the reason why I'm a little bit more confident, especially compared to previous years, is that this guy, I've already seen change in the team. They're not playing perfect. They're having a very compact start to the season because Benfica had to go through the earlier qualifying rounds for Liga Europa, believe it or not, because they finished third, and Portuguese teams have not been doing well over the last few seasons. Um, there's an identity in this team. So it starts with a high press, trying to get the ball back, and then moving forward, it's you can still see players that are struggling a little bit, but it's very clear that he wants those combinations, especially down the wings with fullbacks, midfielders, and wingers, to move the ball progressively. So it might start a little bit slow, but then whether it's a switch of play, center backs playing to the wings, or like I explained, triangle movements down the lines, Benfica will make progress. And um, again, a mix of club friendlies and Europa League. Um, they already played the first two rounds. Like with St. Gallen, they might have lost 2-1 away. It was very poor. But then when they came back and played at home, they beat St. Gallen convincingly 5-0. And then like in the first leg of the next round, they beat Hearts 6-1. Like it's three consecutive games scoring 5 goals. One of the games was a friendly against Belenenses, but like this team is scoring, and it's very early in the season. But I'm trying to see signs, and the signs here is a team that wants to get the ball back and plays with intent. And other than Roger Smith's first season for Benfica, it's been several years now since I've seen a Benfica team eager to do this. Right? With Bruno Lage, it was always the psychological factor of having a new coach. So with the first month or so, Benfica would start ticking with Bruno Lage, but then eventually, because Bruno Lage didn't know how to coach this team down the stretch, they would run out of gas. With Marco Silva, based on the work I remember seeing Fulham, where Marco Silva used to play some of the best football in the Premier League. They just didn't have enough depth in the team or defensive cohesion to survive against better teams. He's now equipped with what I claim is the best squad in the league, and he's showing signs that the identity of the team is now based on what he wants to see. And even in the press conferences, he's not denying what he sees on the field, unlike Rui Jorge, who blames everybody but himself. Um, Marco Silva is very aware of the limitations um, and like what he has to work with, but he talks about high standards. He talks about what it takes to be a Benfica player, what it takes to win, all the things that I want to hear. Someone that respects the fans, respects the size of the club. So I'm going to go on a limb and say, because I don't see Porto being uh, able to repeat what they did last year, where they won so many games by fine margins, and without them making changes to the squad, I believe they're going to be playing the same. I see Benfica with the coach and with a lot of the spine left intact, um, making a run for the title. Like I don't think it's too far fetched. I think with um, the three teams again, it's probably going to boil down to the last 4 games in the season, where someone's going to pull off and eventually win it. But it's fairly tight, and I think it would be unfair to think that just because he's a new coach, he can't win the title. Farioli came in his first season and won it. Um, Sporting under Rui Borges has progressively looked worse in terms of sustainability and quality of play. Um, and then with Farioli, I already talked about it. I don't think it's going to be enough. So um, if I keep seeing the improvements that I've seen so far, I see Benfica going on to winning the title. And the other thing that I want to say, and I'll end it with this, is let's keep in mind that both Sporting and Porto are going to be in the Champions League. Benfica is going to be playing the Europa League if they make it, which I think they will. Um, I can see Benfica capable of rotating the squad more than Porto and Sporting can. If unless Porto and Benfica and Sporting um, want to give up on some of the Europe game, especially against lower team or slightly weaker teams, maybe they will be able to rotate the same extent that Benfica does. But I just don't see it happening. And with Champions League being at least 6 of those 8 games being against top 4, top 5 teams in the top leagues in Europe, um, I see Benfica having a better chance at rotating the squad. And because of that, keeping better and important players for more important games being a key to winning more games throughout the season, right? So whether Porto and Sporting make a run for the cups, that's not the scope of this video. But again, overall, that's I think what it's going to boil down to. For the rest of the league, there's not much to say. I think like we've seen it over the years. Braga can put up a fight here and there, but they're probably going to finish fourth unless one of the big three teams shits the bed. Um, Unlikely. Sporting could be, but I don't think the drop off is going to be that high. What I do think is that it's going to be becoming harder and harder for mid-table teams in Portugal to maintain success. Um, Braga sold Zalazar, who was their best player, and their goalkeeper this summer. So they have to backfill those positions. Their good goalkeeper is not difficult to fill in the Portuguese league, but like replacing a player of Zalazar's qualities is very hard. So it I see those teams and Vitoria. They they started the season with a loss. Um, I don't think that there's a clear team that can sneak in into that third or fourth spot. Famalicão has been well ran over the years, so even though it's also a revolving door of players, they're still able to backfill and bring in quality players. But I just don't see some. It can be another team finishing sixth, seventh. Like it can be Alverca, even though they lost their coach to another team, or it can be like it could even be Marítimo, like to come back to the Liga Portugal and squeeze in. One thing is for certain, um, the drop off and the difference between the top 3 teams and the rest of the league just keeps getting bigger and bigger. Um, Having said that, Carlos Vincent's Braga, if Sporting starts poorly and doesn't get better, I see I see him as a front runner to replace that spot. So Carlos Vincent's Braga keeps getting better. They lost some of their players, but they're run team. That would be my guess. Other than Sporting finishing third due to rotations, Porto finishing second because they might not sustain the quality of wins that they had last year by fine margins, and then Benfica having the best squad and like coached and with very little time has been able to squeeze in his identity and play attacking football. Um, Other than those 3 predictions, my last one would be Carlos Vincent's is probably eyeing a move. Maybe international, it just depends on other teams. But in this competition, this league, if Sporting wants to keep this and sustain the wins and they want to win more trophies that they missed to last season, then yeah, it's Carlos Vincent's managing Sporting, which I hope is not the case because he's a good coach. Um, so that wraps it up. If you stuck around this long, I appreciate that. On your way out, please feel free to like and subscribe to the channel. The summer went really well. We had a lot of guests in the channel where we talk about like the World Cup in live sessions. The goal for this calendar year is to continue that, primarily focusing on. I'll be covering a lot of the Portuguese league. But I'll also have guests to talk about the Premier League in particular, because I've got fans for multiple teams that are interested in joining. So be on the lookout for those. For the Portuguese league, I can't guarantee how often I'll be providing reviews, but I'll provide as much coverage as I can, given that there's not so much out there, especially in the YouTube media. So I'm happy to share some of my thoughts and put the Liga Portugal on the spotlight, which gets a lot of stake. But I think there's lots of good players and lots of good coaches and things that we can learn. So until then, be safe and behave yourself.